What's the number one challenge for businesses today?
Workforce development, attracting, recruiting, and retaining people.
And that's why we created this podcast, designed for the frustrated CEO, the under-resourced recruiter, or the overworked manager, to give you the tools to tackle those WTF moments.
It's time to open another workforce therapy file. Welcome back to Workforce Therapy Files. Happy New Year, Jamie, Jason.
Happy New Year, Molly.
So
Jason.
excited to see you guys again and get back on the podcast train.
Absolutely. You know, today's Friends Day.
I didn't.
Yeah, it is.
But I love that.
At least according to my Facebook memories.
I think I consider you two friends.
I think so.
I always want to sing that song. So no one told you life was gonna be this way.
Very good.
Oh, R.I.P.
I feel like there was a lot of claps there that shouldn't have been there, but
It was perfect.
I always do it wrong.
same.
Yeah.
So to that point of remembering that today is Friends Day and we automatically went to the Friends episode,
Yeah,
I would say that that's a pretty powerful brand, don't you?
I think so.
It is one of the most powerful TV brands, in my opinion. I mean, everyone knows it.
Everybody.
I mean, and now they've turned it into T-shirts and everything
Right.
else. My daughter has a Friends T-shirt.
And it's a positive brand, too. It's not
Yes.
something you see and you go, ugh, gross,
you
friends.
think of love and fun and joy and experiences, right?
That's right.
So that's pretty crazy because today we're going to talk about employer branding.
Oh,
What a segue.
I think that was
Right?
amazing.
What a segue.
I did.
That was highly
great.
skilled.
This is what happens in the morning when I'm on point.
Okay.
On
Caffeinated.
Friends Day.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. For the listeners, we usually record in the afternoons. This one,
That's right.
recording in the morning, so we're all caffeinated up and ready to rock and roll.
I can't wait to get the feedback that's like, y'all really should
Yeah.
do the mornings.
Jim's going to have to slow this
So
one
much
down, the
better.
audio. He's going to have to slow the recording
We're
down
at-
because it's so,
At peak
so
coffee.
fast. Okay.
So, Jason,
Yes.
you are our resident expert when it comes to employer branding. Now, I definitely have an opinion
Yeah.
as an organization that helps empower organizations to change the narrative. Oftentimes, when we go into an organization, that's the problem. They've just got a very poor reputation from entry level all the way up to senior leadership from an outside perspective. Now, not saying that it isn't like that
Yeah.
when you walk in the door, but more often than not, the story needs to be changed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, tell us your thoughts on employer branding, expert.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that confidence. I think one of the most challenging things about just branding in general is helping people understand that it's not your logo.
Yeah.
We're not talking about your logo or some mark or your colors or your font. Branding is how your audience feels about you. That's what branding is. That's what your brand is.
Yep.
And so an employer brand just means how do people feel about you as an employer, not for the widget you sell or the service you provide. So now that we have the definition out of the way and we understand what it is, I think it's important to think about, why, when, how, and who we do it with. So just to compartmentalize the discussion a little. One thing that I think a lot of people get really mixed up on is, the why. Why do we need to do it? Why we're so busy? We got all these other things going on. And one, there are a couple different reasons you may want to adjust your employer brand. You may need to revive it if it's just kind of stale, or maybe there's really no positive or negative sentiment in the market. You may want to just, inject some energy into it. You may want to adjust it. Maybe it's not in line with the goals or the new company values. So, maybe it just needs a little something new. And then there are also instances where you might need to rebuild an employer brand because there was a negative incident or an issue that happened that you need to correct.
I actually have a good story for this one.
Yeah.
So I moved to another city to go and work for this company once.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a brand I was familiar with as a consumer, but I'd never worked there before. And I assumed that working there would be as amazing as the way that I viewed the brand from a consumer perspective.
That's right. Yeah.
So I moved to this city, and I go to get my new cell phone because my prior employer had provided one. So I go into the local office to get my cell phone, and they're like, "Oh, you just moved here. What brought you here?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to work for." And the dread on this woman's face was seriously like, Oh.
Dum, dum.
Yeah, because it was a smaller community. There were so many people who had worked there or knew somebody who had worked there. And it was not viewed positively. And I remember being like, oh gosh, what have I done? I just moved all the way over here to come and work for this company.
Yeah.
Right. And this was before there were all these tools that were available to find out what it would be like to work somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. This is before like Glassdoor and LinkedIn ratings and Google ratings. Gosh, that makes me sound like I'm 87. But regardless, this was before employer brand was all word of mouth, right? It was how the community viewed you
Yeah.
versus the way that I think it goes now. But
Well,
I'd like to
and-
hear some thoughts of it. Yeah.
And I think too, Jamie, a lot of it when we were growing up and getting out of school and all the things, right? It was more about the reputation of the company. It wasn't about the employee experience.
That's right.
Because so often you went to an organization and you stayed for 30 years and that was what you did. You sucked it up, you did your shift and you made it happen, and if you made a difference you were great, if not you were fine with that.
Right.
But now I think that paradigm has made a complete shift where the employee, their opinion matters. And I'm not saying that it didn't before, but the thought of going into an organization and spending so much of your time, and I believe that life has become a different level of precious. So the value of what your employer gives you, that narrative has completely changed.
Yeah. Because in this situation that I'm talking about, the only research I did about the company was looking at the company website,
That's right.
right? There was no employee perspective that I could capture.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't even out there.
Right.
Yeah.
CrowdSouth did a project a few years ago with a manufacturing company. It was in the Rust Belt, and it was a large organization who had bought a facility that produced something that they produced. So they took it over. In that process, they said, and they didn't know, they didn't call it employer branding. You know, that was just a term they didn't know. But they said, look, we need to let the community know somehow subtly that we are not that old company. And upon a little digging and research, we saw what they were talking about. It was a facility that didn't have, it didn't have a good cooling system, so it was very hot to be in there. They had installed giant fans on the ceiling since they purchased it. You know, there was a narrative we could tell about why things had changed. Also, we really leaned in to some new employee testimonials or employees that stayed on. Lean into those testimonials about how things have changed, and without calling anybody out or throwing anybody under the bus, like really telling a different story than had been told in that small community before, because it was a small community. And the whole goal was to change the public perception. And so how we measured that was through those reviews. So their Google reviews increased from less than 3 stars to 4 point something over the course of 12 months. So that was considered a success. Their hiring woes eased a little, and they were able to move on. So it was a nice story to be able to tell, where the employer was open and willing, understood they had an issue, didn't know what to call it, but we know we've got a thing going on here and we need to fix it.
So let me ask you a question from a skeptic's point of view. Okay. So whenever you meet with a client and you're getting their I know what the issue is story, how do you make sure that what you're putting together to improve their image isn't spin, isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? It's
we're not
legit.
manufacturing a reason or
absolutely.
or a story.
Bait and switch.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll go back to a couple of things I just mentioned. I think surveys are important.
The employee surveys for the whole population.
Employee surveys, just public surveys,
Yep.
public sentiment. Customer surveys. Customers are going to tell you a lot about how your employees feel.
Yep.
You have to read into it and ask the right questions. But yeah, I would say several layers of surveys, and then getting testimonials from the employees that were there before or during the issue, who understand the issue, that really tell the new story.
Yeah.
Because they were there before and after. If it's a situation where we need to adjust the brand, like the one I just laid out. So, you know, I think it's a few things, and it's also, I mean, just like anything, you can't solve a problem until you admit you have one.
Yeah,
And in that case, that was a conversation I was having. We were doing a hiring campaign for that company, and they said, you know, I went to lunch with one of the guys and on their talent team, and he said, "What do you think about this?" And I said, "That sounds like an employer branding issue. I mean, we can fix that." He's like, "Really?" He's like, "I thought we were just stuck with it." I was like, "No, we just need to
gotta
we
tell
need to
our
ask
story.
people what they think, and we need to tell a
Yeah.
new story. We need to do it quick."
Well, I know that Parcel and Incipio both use surveys from Org Vitals, and one of the cool things about Org Vitals survey package is that they offer an employee net promoter score.
Right?
So for the layperson, what does the net promoter score tell you about an organization?
Am I the layperson?
Yeah, well, you're going to explain it. You're the
Okay.
marketing person
We're
that uses
going
Yeah,
to pretend
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it tells if they're willing to recommend you to someone else.
Yeah.
So,
So from an employee perspective, it would be whether or not the employee would refer you as a company to work
yep.
for,
Is
right?
this a good place to work? Yes
That's
or
right.
no? Yeah.
So one of the things that we do at Incipio before we even go into the discovery meeting with the client, when we get the, hey, I'm interested in, we immediately go into research mode. Research for, just Google the company's name and find out everything you need to know. Have they been in the news? What are their standing lawsuits, if any at all? What is their Glassdoor rating? What are people saying on Indeed? Going out to LinkedIn, who's connected to that company that you can reach out to, or better yet, individuals that used to work there. Make that phone call. So what'd you think? I understand that you were there. Help me understand. Because more often than not, the people that are in the roles making these decisions don't understand what has been said. They have a different perception of the work that's being done and executed than those that are actually doing the work. I'm going to say that over the last 9 years, from an Incipio perspective, that's what we experience. So when we go in to have that initial conversation and have these different things to show them and say, this is what you're up against, it's really more informing them of why they have these opportunities today, and not so much about how Incipio can help them solve it, but really addressing, is this something that you want to solve? And that's very telling for us, because if they're like, oh, there's no way that that's true.
Yeah.
There's no way that that's right.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. We pay very well, you know, just different reasons, let's say. But I'm telling you, if you have a 2-star rating on Glassdoor, you've got a problem.
Yeah. Well, and we're doing another really fun project right now for a company, a very large organization. It's part of a global company, but they have a large facility that we're working with. And we're doing a social listening campaign, which is really fun. So we're creating this, we're basically, you know, algorithmically pulling all of this different data from various sources, all the social channels, Google reviews, all the different review platforms. We're pulling it into one report every month to say, this is everything that's being said about you right now for the past month on the web that we could find. And they're thick reports, and it's really, so we have to go through and synthesize that and kind of pull out a narrative and say, this is kind of what we're seeing. Look at this comment on page 4. Look at this social chain that happened on, on X last week about your brand. And so, but what we can do, I thought it was very mature of this client. They asked for it. They said, hey, can you do, they didn't really know what they wanted either, but when it came down to it, it was really a social listening campaign to find out what people think. And because they don't want to enter into a contract or an agreement with us to do work on employer brand until they know what people think of their brand. So this is beautiful. That's exactly your first step. That's perfect.
an ideal client.
Yes. And it was their idea. So
Yeah.
I love that. I was like, I do not mind postponing the big work to get it right. And I think if your team if you're listening to this far into this conversation and your team is considering an employer branding campaign, or someone in your organization thinks you need it, I would start with those. Find someone who can do these surveys for you.
Yeah.
Find someone who can do a social listening campaign and get the data, then build a strategy around that. And then you're going to have way more success than you would have just going in with assumptions.
I also like to ask in the interview sometimes with candidates, ask the question of, tell me what you've heard about working here,
Yeah.
right? Tell me what you know about
Now,
what
is there
it's like to
bias
work
in there,
here.
or are they going to say
Oh, 100%
they're in an
there's
interview?
bias.
You know, they're going to say,
Absolutely.
"Oh, it's great." Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why Mickey Mouse said
well-
that. Oh.
I think one of the things from a candidate perspective,
Uh-huh.
you know, when they're giving that information in an interview, I think it's very telling of their candidacy for the role.
Right.
You know, how honest are they willing to be?
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard great things. I'm like, are you an employee referral? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what source code are you?
Yeah. Right.
So that's the why. We're going to move on to the when,
Yeah.
right? So when do you do it? One thing I always tell clients is, you know, you should really be having always on campaign. And what I mean by always on is just always running under the radar. You're monitoring, you're putting the positive stories out there through your social media channels, through local media, regional media, if you have a location. You want to be telling that story all the time. This shouldn't be something that you're not doing. And maybe your marketing team, internal marketing team is handling that. And that's completely, that's a good path to take. But if you're not doing it at all and you're not thinking about it, I would say the answer to win is now. Start now in some way. Because you're weaving your own narrative. You're able to correct negative publicity. These things are possible. You don't have to just roll over and you know, and be a party to it, be a witness to it. You can be part of the action that changes that narrative.
So let me ask you this question. So one of the things that we learned was that we could go and own our Glassdoor company page.
Yep.
And by owning it, it would allow you the opportunity to give individual ownership internal to your organization, like access to be able to respond to comments that are left on your Glassdoor page. Do you recommend saying, thank you for your feedback and just leaving it at that? Or actually discussing the kinds of stuff that are brought up on your Glassdoor page? Like, what works better for the brand? Is it to set the story straight on your Glassdoor page, or is it simply a thank you for your feedback generic response? Right?
Ooh, I have an answer, but I'll let you go first.
I'd
Yeah,
like to hear your thoughts.
we'll see what Molly says. My answer is, you know, is going to be, well, it depends. It depends on, are they going through an issue? Do they have a publicity issue they're addressing?
Right.
Because maybe there is a lawsuit or something that they need to technically drive these answers to. Please follow this link for more information about the current situation. We're updating it regularly. You know, that sort of thing. Maybe there's a legal answer. So I don't want to pretend I'm have a law degree. But the other part of
you for
that, yeah. This is not legal advice. But the other answer to that is, you know, if you should always be honest and truthful with your audience.
Yeah.
Have canned answers, but not the same canned answer. So thank you for your feedback. Thank you for your feedback isn't enough. They don't feel. Thank you for your feedback. John is the manager in that department. I've passed this on to him, and he's going to be reaching out by the end of the day. If you don't hear back, please let us know.
Yeah.
Oh, there's action behind this. There's teeth in it. They're actually going to do something. What it tells, it doesn't matter what that comment was or who that person was that left that comment. What you're doing is you're now telling everyone else in the world who read that comment that your company does something about it.
Yeah.
That you're not just sitting on it. And if no further comments happen in that chain, they're going to assume you just took care of it because you said you were. Now, if the next comment is, you never called me, that's a problem.
Right.
You need to actually do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. John doesn't even work there.
Yeah, who's John? John's a
Way to pick a
sketchy,
generic
broad.
name.
Yeah. What do you think, Molly?
So I agree.
Okay.
A little bit different, though.
Okay, let's fight.
Definitely agree that you have to comment, and it can't be one of those canned.
Yeah.
Thanks for thanks for your
Yeah.
comments. We're glad that you're sharing this information.
Yeah, copy and paste every time,
Let's
yeah.
not do that. However, thank them for the comment. You appreciate the courage. You don't have to go into this detail, but saying something that you appreciate them sharing this, right? And I encourage all of our partners to go in and please call me
Here's my number.
at XYZ123, because if they have enough courage to go out there and be a keyboard warrior, then they're going to have enough courage to call you. And it shows everyone that's looking at your ratings that you care.
Yeah. And that's, there you go.
With a direct phone number, we just fist
We
bump.
fist bumped, yeah.
with a direct phone number for these individuals to call to. It could even be someone that's curious and say, you know, I applied for the job, and it looks like that would be the person that I report to that this person is concerned about in this Glassdoor rating. I'm going to call that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it opens
I may
up,
not even type anything. I
Right?
might just call you because now I know who to call.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I think from a candidate experience and what individuals do today who have so much information at their fingertips, and it also empowers people that shouldn't go out and do things, right? Because that person could have been rightfully terminated or whatever that experience was. However, you have to address it as an employer. If it goes unrecognized and there's no rebuttal or help me understand, I want to solve this for you as best I can. That's not saying you're going to give them their job back. That's not saying that you're going to solve the problem. I'm going to solve this the best that I can for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's my phone number.
Right.
It opens a whole new meaning to employer branding from a perspective of we care.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, employees want that today because it has that such a brush feeling of get the job, do the job. There's no assimilation. There's no onboarding, especially for the essential worker category. There's a lot of unnoticed work. And in my opinion, especially within this region, majority of the organizations that we have within this community are essential worker category.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't just keep not paying attention to their needs.
That's right.
Yeah.
My opinion.
Good. Those are good opinions.
Thanks. I
I
got
like
a little
that.
on a soapbox right there. I'm
Yeah.
gonna chill out. We need a masseuse up in here for
Yeah.
these.
Oh, yeah, we
that
get
would be
tense.
amazing.
So that's the win. You know, the other reasons, you know, I said, you know, okay, those were generic answers. Always be doing employer branding. You should be doing it now. You know, I can just hear the eyeballs rolling in the audience.
Yeah, but
The,
I
uh,
think there's
the-
a reason for that.
Right. Well, yeah, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
'cause
That's
people are
what
like,
you should be
I
doing.
hear you, but I don't know what to do.
Yeah, what do I do about it? So, you know, the other thing about the win is, you know, somebody could walk into your office and say, we need to adjust the brand or we need to see what people are saying about us. And that's, you know, that's really why you're doing this. But, you know, before a major hiring push, you need to have your brand adjusted. If you're hiring hundreds or thousands in one fell swoop, you need to make sure that your brand is where it needs to be before that. And then before major announcements, you know, before you go out to the public to say, hey, scrutinize us, come look at our brand, look at me, you want to make sure the brand is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when you need to. What about how? How do we do it?
I think that's the biggest question. Because
Yeah.
when I'm hearing you, and I'll tell you that the bulk of my HR career was not one that was talking about our employer brand.
Mhm.
There was this, I actually remember the meeting I was in when people started talking about it. I'm like, wow, okay. So now we're in marketing. I had no idea that I was also supposed to be in marketing. I took one
Yeah.
marketing class in college, and we learned about product and price and place.
Yeah.
That's all I remember.
Someone on your team needs to own employer brand. That
That's
needs to be their part of their job description.
And they do, whether or not they know it or not.
Oh, they own it. Yeah.
They already own
Hang
it,
on.
even if it's bad.
Hang on, as a business owner, people are going, now I have to do what?
Yeah, now
Yeah.
you're also in marketing.
You do. I'm not saying it needs to be on your talent team. Maybe it's in your marketing team. Maybe it's someone, maybe you're a large enough organization, you have a culture role. But somebody needs to own it. And somebody needs to own it and work with the various departments or outsource resources to continue working and adjusting that brand.
I think how it gets started is internally.
Yeah.
If you're going to go, so Jason, you were talking about doing a big hiring push or a big campaign to change the narrative. I think it starts internally. I think you start with an employee referral campaign. Maybe it's for 30 days. You up the employee referral to, I don't know, if you're paying $500 now, maybe you up it for 30 days for $1,000. You change the narrative internally,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's what you start to promote externally in a huge wave push. So when you talk about targeted marketing, all of those things, it's really the employee base. They're helping you change the narrative. They're already there.
Right.
Empower them to do that. And, they want to know the people that I know.
Right.
They're going to pay me if my cousin comes to work here or friend or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
They want that.
I love that.
Oh, I must be a great employee good job, me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pile on that because on top
Pile
of
it.
that sort of thing, you want to live your values.
Yes.
So if you're getting ready to tell an employer branding story, which is the how do you do it? You tell a story. If you're getting ready to tell a story, you better be sure that story's true and you're living it, or somebody's going to call you on your bull.
Oh,
Yeah,
Lord.
for sure.
Yes.
So live it, like Molly's saying, referral programs. If your organization says we are very family first, family oriented, we support work-life balance, if that's your thing, if that's your culture,
I have an opinion on that. Keep going.
you'd better be telling your employees that in their reviews. You better be plastering it on posters. You better give them opportunities to tap into that
Yeah.
benefit.
And make adjustments whenever
make
you're
adjustments.
told that what you're doing isn't matching what you're saying you're doing.
Then go out and tell the world that's how you are.
Yeah.
Because if you're not living it at home, somebody's going to call you out and say, the world is their oyster with reviews and message boards and social media. So, they can go out and just be like, they do not do this.
Yeah.
And then all that you just built up is gone.
So, the whole family approach that companies have to promote. Listen, I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So there were family businesses all throughout my family.
Right.
And I don't know if either of you have ever worked in a family business, but it is not rainbows and butterflies. There were several Thanksgivings and Christmases that were so uncomfortable because of the family business. So when I hear companies promote, we're a family business. We treat you like family. Well, for the people that don't have great family experiences, that's not a good thing.
No, and
So
there's a
why
lot of
are we
people that come from very
Right.
fractured
Right,
families.
Right.
And I don't think that that's a benefit.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe saying it's a family-owned business, fourth generation, and promoting the longevity of the organization would be something good. But I'm not a fan.
No.
Right.
I'm not a fan of we treat you like family. Well, let me tell you,
Yeah.
I got some twisted ways going each side. I'm not down with that.
I understand that.
Sorry, soapbox again. I'm on a roll today.
We need like a soapbox warning, Jim. Like a here comes.
Sorry.
One of the questions that I also have for you guys, and I have more questions than I have answers today for this episode, but I was thinking about when we started talking about how we use our social channels and all of these other pieces. And I never consider myself personally responsible for our employer brand, but one of my top LinkedIn posts, Jamie Swaim, SPHR in LinkedIn, in case anybody wants to connect. One of my top LinkedIn posts was when I worked for a company that had changed their dress code, and I took a picture of my jeans, and I was like, I'm wearing jeans not on Friday. What? Because we had rolled out a dress for your day policy. It was seriously like one of the most interactive.
What year was this, Jamie?
I don't want to tell you because I'm going to tell you where I was working. You can find it if you go back and look through my LinkedIn feed, but it was just a picture of my jeans and the number of people who were like responding. And I guess the reason I'm saying this is because now I'm a brand ambassador,
Yeah.
whether or not anybody told me I was or not.
You are.
So what do you recommend in terms of this how that is happening that no one's managing?
Yeah. You have to have a consistent narrative going on in the company. You
Right.
have to just talk it to death.
Oh, and if you don't, there is one.
There's
gonna
one.
create
It's just not approved.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Well, and that's the thing about a brand, and this whole conversation is about. A brand is a living, breathing thing. You can guide it.
Yeah.
You can guide it in different directions, but it's going to have a life of its own.
Yeah.
So you better do a little guiding.
And just as a quick parcel compliance note, which happens in almost every episode, it's also protected activity. So if an individual goes out on your social channels or their social channels and they make a comment that works for your company and it's about pay, benefits, or working conditions, and even one employee likes it, it is now protected speech.
Yeah.
There's not anything that you can do as a company to retaliate against that person. So just know that that is affecting your brand and there's not a lot you can do about it.
I think you need to say that again for the louder for people in the back.
Yeah.
Because I don't think employers understand that.
Right.
It sucks. It hurts. It's embarrassing.
It is
It's
embarrassing.
frustrating.
Yeah.
In an organization where you have how many different personalities and characters, on average 5 different generations, you've got individuals that don't even have a Facebook account or a LinkedIn account or Twitter. You're on the TikTok train right now, right, Jamie?
Always.
And they're like,
It's a little
"What is
embarrassing,
that?
actually.
I don't even understand why. What are you doing? Do you know who you're giving all your information to individuals that are in the younger generation where they've got all the apps on their phone,
Yeah.
and most of them communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So when they make one post about the bathrooms were dirty at work today, it's huge.
And
Right.
that's the importance of that social listening piece that I'm
Yes.
finding valuable lately in our
Mhm.
work is always be listening, always be monitoring what people are saying about you so you can react to it. So in the how section, we're going to say, you're going to start with surveys, you're going to start with social listening, you're going to move to storytelling. There's some tactical things you can do. You can run campaigns, directly run ad campaigns. You can target those geographically if you have an issue in a certain region with one of your locations. You can saturate the entire market if you're trying to tell a bigger story for the organization.
Mhm.
Another one I always like to throw into a campaign, especially if we're doing one prior to an announcement or a hiring campaign, is I like to build up some community compassion, show giving back, show what you do for your employees, show what you do for the community. And those things they will take on a life of their own sometimes.
Yeah.
And people will just associate you with positive things. So there are a lot of things you can do. We could talk about the how all day long.
That's right.
And it is work. It is work. And I always like to point that out on top of everything else you have to do, which is why this podcast exists, honestly.
One of
to
the
find
things
resources.
that I saw a company do on the social, community giving space is they actually used it as an engagement activity for their employees by asking them who they wanted to support.
Yeah.
So making suggestions about things. I've seen companies also provide paid days off for give back days to go and get involved in the things that they're passionate about. So finding ways to do that, because those are the kinds of things that absolutely make social feeds.
And
right?
highlight it.
Like, look, I'm getting paid right now to volunteer at the soup kitchen. That is really important to me. That's down in my community.
Yeah. Highlight it. Highlight it. Talk about it. Don't be embarrassed about that. A lot of the clients that we run into when we start these campaigns, we don't really want to brag, or we don't want to talk about this thing where it's like,
And
no.
nobody else patting you on the back.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. Talk about it. It's a good thing. Your employees will latch onto it. It shows them the things you value.
That's right.
Think of it that way. Final bucket. Who's doing it? So we're
Isn't there
gonna.
a song?
Who's
What
doing it?
Find a bucket. What does that mean? Tell me what that means.
What's that?
Find a bucket. What does that mean?
Find a bucket.
Final bucket.
Final bucket.
The final bucket of the four.
The final
Why?
countdown.
Why? When?
Not what I
How?
heard.
Why? When? How? And who?
Oh,
So
yes,
who-
the final bucket.
Who is doing it? Where's the caffeine?
That was good.
So who's doing it? Who's doing the employer branding work? Well, it's a combination of your talent team. It's a combination of it may be your marketing team. Senior leadership needs to get behind it. Honestly, your senior leadership, they have responsibility for a lot of thought leadership in the company. So
Say it again.
your senior leadership
Yes.
is responsible for the
Yes.
thought leadership of the company. And what I mean by that is those at the top, the things they talk about, the things that they value, what they express becomes company culture and values. And so that needs to be closely monitored. Not everyone has a filter. Not everyone can stay focused, especially a lot of leadership. They have attention issues sometimes, and they're all over the place because they're good at thinking and solving problems. So as the talent team or the marketing team, it's your job to look back at those people, keep that narrative where it needs to be. So leadership, talent, and marketing team all have ownership of it. Sometimes you need to convince leadership, get their buy-in, on what you're doing. Sometimes they're driving the direction of it, the directive to do the employer branding. So it can start a lot of different ways but someone has to own it. That's the bottom line. Someone has to own it and manage it ongoing.
So we've got a client here in Louisville, in Scipio, and we work directly with the C-suite. the business owner, and this person, soon as he goes into the company, 2, maybe 3 times a week, he walks around for at least 20 minutes. Hey, how's it going? Just holding his coffee, drinking his coffee. First 20 minutes. How's it going? How are the kids? These are folks, this is the owner of the company walking around the floor
Yeah.
2 or 3 times a week just to make eye contact and how's it going? Patting people on the back. Hey, I hear today's your birthday. Now, what is that saying to the people that work for him? Beyond all measure of what he even thinks. He sees that it's 20 minutes. Those people that work for him, changing the story.
There was a
Changing
company
the
that I
narrative.
worked for that we had 1,600 employees, and we brought everybody into town for new employee orientation, and one day of new employee orientation was followed by dinner at the CEO's house. Every single new employee that was there for the 9 years that I was there had dinner at the CEO's house.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing.
That's empowering the organization.
Absolutely.
So when you think about who, and you're talking about senior leadership, I believe that everyone plays a part in it for sure throughout the entire organization. But to your point, Jason, senior leadership definitely sets the tone.
I love everything about this conversation and learning from the two of you because you guys are definitely experts in this space. I do encourage everybody to check out the show notes. Connect with Jason, Molly, and I on LinkedIn because we are active members of the LinkedIn community. And I'm going to ask Jim, close that file. Thanks for listening to the Workforce Therapy Files. We hope you learned something new, and we're thankful for the time that you spent with us today. If there's a topic you'd like us to discuss, reach out to us. Our contact information is listed in the show notes. Until next time, keep your head up.